Jahangir, what is very important is that policies should not be changed too often. Policies should be changed for the better. In other words, it helps anybody, doesn't hurt anybody, but any policies that hurt people should be avoided. That always creates economic problems. And reforms that are clearly beneficial on all fronts, as you mentioned also, the goods and services tax, they should be brought in quickly. Unfortunately, politics is being played in terms of the GST being implemented. And to my mind, opposition parties sometimes oppose good economic reform just for the sake of opposition, not for economic reasons.
So we just saw on our screen when we were showing some of the footage from Parliament, you may not have seen it because you don't have the thing in front of you, but we just showed shots of Sonia Gandhi with Pranab Mukherjee. When Chidambaram spoke in Parliament, he alluded to what many believe was Pranab Mukherjee's budget, and he said that was the start of our mistakes and problems. You yourself alluded to the Vodafone case. Do you believe that that is the moment when India began to falter and make these wrong decisions that you just talked about, sir?
I think the budget in which we introduced retrospective legislation to overthrow the Supreme Court judgment on the Vodafone case, together with several clauses, was the start of a very negative perception globally about India. Today people have a very negative perception because they feel that our tax authorities intervene too much in creating difficulties for business. India has always been ranked very low on ease of doing business, and we are further affecting our position on that front. People get disgusted with the way they have to operate in India to do business, and I think that was the start of it. When the Supreme Court judgment on the Vodafone matter came, the globe applauded us. They said, here's a country where if the government makes a mistake, the courts will redress it. And then we go and retrospectively amend that. And retrospectively to 1960s, I think was the start of an extremely bad perception in the world. And a bad perception in India.
So you've outlined what we could do to control the crisis. Let's assume this does not happen. Let's assume that the government cannot act perfectly and quickly, and the rupee, say, settles at around 68 to 70. How long do you think it will take for India to then regain its economic momentum and to control the negative effects of a low rupee and a low Sensex, sir?
Well, that will clearly a rupee at the level of 68 or 70 will be very negative for the economy. Of course, on the positive sides, there is the fact that the agricultural season would be good. If we are able to get the goods and services tax legislation passed, that could be good. There are many weapons in our armory which would get the economy to going well. But the rupee being very weak could be a very negative factor. So I feel that the most important thing for the government to do right now is to ensure that the rupee gets back, to my mind, to the 57 level.
So we're running out of time. I want to ask you two quick questions. Do you believe there is something that India Inc. itself could be doing to help India in this moment of its economic crisis, sir?
Well, India Inc. Clearly by getting more efficient, by investing more in new projects, despite the difficult situation, could certainly help. But currently the macroeconomic situation created, whether by actions or inactions by the government, needs serious attention before anything can be done for the growth to be restored. The good news is, unlike many countries in the world, we have many weapons in our armory to get the growth rate back to, say, 6% plus in the second half of this financial year and 8% or so in the next financial year if we act strongly at this stage.
So the reason I ask is very often what consumers find
cannot think of a strong growth.
The reason I asked you that, sir, is very often what consumers see is that, let's say petrol goes up by 5% or 10%. A lot of manufacturers raise their price by a much higher proportion but blame the petrol. So they basically give themselves a much higher profit margin under the guise of the easy offhand statement that sabka bhav badh raha hai. Now these economic activities really hurt the consumer. Is there something organizations like CII or India Inc. can do itself to control some of its members and industrialists from not trying to profiteer of the economic crisis?
I think your perception, Jhanvi, unfortunately is incorrect. There is no
it happens all the time.
If you see the last quarter, no, not at all. In which case the profits of all the companies would be rising tremendously and the stock market would take that into account. That has not been happening. That is incorrect. There's too much competition in India for anybody to even attempt such a thing.
Okay, so my last question to you. You've talked about the introduction of GST and you've talked about the battling of the rupee by the Reserve Bank of India. What would you like to say, not to the government for economic prescriptions, because you've given those, but what would you like to say to the political system right now? What would your message be to all the politicians as we face this very difficult moment?
I think in the interests of the country, politicians should look to actions in Parliament and in the state legislative assemblies which are in the economic interests of the country and not necessarily in the narrow interest of their political parties. This applies to both the government and the opposition in my view.
All right. So thank you very much for talking to NewsX. It's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. And we look forward to speaking to you some more, and hopefully the next time we speak, some of the remedies that you have suggested would have been taken up by the government. That was Godrej, the chairman of the Godrej Group, speaking exclusively to NewsX. We'll be bringing you the interview. If you've just joined it and only seen the latter part of it, we'll be playing it again for you through the day. And stay tuned right now for much more news and updates coming up in just 3 minutes. Don't go away.